Remember 2020, the year the world went quiet? The empty streets, the masks, the closed borders. It felt like a scene from a movie, but it was our reality. For the first time in modern history, the entire planet seemed to hit the pause button. But let's rewind. Let's imagine a world where that never happened. What if the COVID-19 pandemic simply didn't exist? If COVID had never emerged, life would have just continued. The familiar rhythm of our pre-2020 world would have kept its beat. Imagine packed concerts, bustling airports without a second thought, and classrooms full of students. The global economy was projected to keep growing, and millions of small businesses, the heartbeats of our communities, would never have faced the threat of closing their doors forever. It sounds like a perfect world, right? No loss, no lockdown, no fear. But in avoiding that pain, we also would have missed one of the most profound and perhaps necessary wake-up calls of our lifetime. Let's talk about work. Before the pandemic, the idea of working from home was a niche concept, a perk mostly found in the tech industry or among a few forward-thinking companies. The daily commute, the 9-to-5 office grind, the cubicle culture, that was the unshakable norm for hundreds of millions of people. If COVID never happened, remote work might still be a distant dream. Zoom meetings? They'd probably still be a tool for international corporations, not the go-to for everything from team huddles to family birthdays. The great remote work experiment, which proved that productivity isn't tied to a physical location, would never have happened on such a massive scale. Millions of people who discovered they could build a life and a career from anywhere might still be stuck in traffic, dreaming of a flexibility they didn't know was possible. The pandemic didn't invent remote work, but it certainly accelerated its adoption by at least a decade, fundamentally reshaping our relationship with our jobs and our offices. We would have missed out on this massive shift in work-life balance. And then there's our planet. The lockdowns had an unintended but remarkable side effect. As factories shut down, planes were grounded, and cars stayed in driveways, the Earth took a breath. In 2020, global carbon emissions saw their largest annual drop ever recorded, falling by nearly 7%. Smog cleared from city skies, revealing mountain ranges that hadn't been seen for decades. Waterways became cleaner. It was a temporary reprieve, of course, but it was also an unprecedented global experiment. For the first time, scientists had real-world data showing what happens when human activity slows down on a massive scale. If COVID never happened, pollution levels would have continued their steady climb. We would have missed that stark visual reminder of our impact on the environment and the powerful evidence of how quickly nature can begin to heal if we give it a chance. That pause gave the climate conversation a new, urgent context that we might not have had otherwise. But the changes go much deeper than just work and the environment. COVID forced us to look in the mirror, and we didn't always like what we saw. The pandemic acted like a magnifying glass, exposing the deep cracks in our societies. It highlighted stark inequalities in healthcare, access to resources, and economic stability. Frontline workers, previously overlooked, were suddenly declared essential heroes, yet many still lacked basic protections and fair wages. The digital divide became a chasm, separating those who could work and learn from home from those who couldn't. If the pandemic never happened, would we have confronted these issues with the same urgency? Perhaps we would have continued living in an illusion of stability and control, content to ignore the fragility of the systems we depend on. The pandemic forced uncomfortable conversations about social justice, public health infrastructure, and our collective responsibility to one another. It was a painful education, but an essential one. And what about us, as individuals? We were forced into isolation, but in that quiet, many of us found new ways to connect. We had video calls with relatives we hadn't spoken to in years. We checked in on our neighbors. We rediscovered simple joys like baking bread or going for a walk. We were reminded of what truly matters: our health, our families, our communities. The pandemic triggered a global mental health crisis, but it also destigmatized conversations around anxiety, depression, and burnout. We learned about our own resilience, our ability to adapt to unimaginable circumstances. We were reminded that for all our plans and ambitions, life is unpredictable and fragile. We learned that human connection isn't just a luxury, it's a fundamental need. Without the shared experience of the pandemic, would we have cherished those hugs with loved ones quite as much? Would we have valued a simple dinner with friends with the same gratitude? So, a world without COVID would have certainly avoided immense pain, grief, and economic devastation. Millions of lives would have been spared, and the course of history would feel much more normal. But it also would have been a world that missed a crucial lesson. We would have missed the chance to rethink work, to see our impact on the planet, and to confront the inequalities in our societies. We would have missed the profound, personal lessons about resilience, connection, and what it means to be human in a world that can change in an instant. History doesn't usually pause, but for a moment it did. And in that stillness, we were given a chance to see everything more clearly. The challenge now is not to forget what we saw. If this made you think, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the what-ifs that shape our world. We'll see you in the next one.